"Leave now, or security will escort you out." The cold words stung the old veteran at his son's graduation, but 6 seals stood, revealing his heroic past, silencing the room. A story of quiet courage and respect that'll stir your heart, inspiring kindness and honor. Welcome to Thankful Tales. Together we make their courage live beyond memory. The sun peeked over the quiet hills of Marshall County, Virginia, as Ellen Harper pulled into the parking lot of Hillcrest University. The morning air carried the sweet scent of fresh-baked cookies from a food stand near the auditorium, mingling with the cheerful chirping of birds. Today was her son James's college graduation, and Ellen's heart buzzed with excitement, clutching the program with Dean's List printed in bold. She stepped out, her pastel dress fluttering in the breeze, a nameless pride swelling in her chest. Inside, Hillcrest's auditorium glowed with soft white light. Polished wooden floors reflected sunlight streaming through tall windows. Plastic chairs creaked. Whispers from the crowd holding balloons and cameras blended into a lively hum. Ellen sat in the 5th row, near the aisle, smiling at the families bustling around her. Then she noticed him. Frank Sullivan, a Marine veteran in his 60s, didn't enter through the main doors. He slipped in through the emergency exit, wearing an old Marine dress jacket, its seams frayed, paired with faded jeans and worn boots, hands clasped behind his back. He stood like a mast in a sea of hurried people, his weathered face radiating a strange, steady patience. Frank wasn't lost, his eyes locked on the stage, waiting for something sacred. In his jacket pocket, he carried a faded photo of his late wife, Annie, holding baby James. "I'll be there." "Annie," he whispered, memories of sleepless nights in Kandahar flooding back, when gunfire kept him awake. And that photo was his only anchor. Today, he'd driven 10 hours to keep his promise to his son. A few curious glances from the crowd flicked his way, some suspicious, then turned away. Ellen felt a knot in her chest, though she didn't know why. Frank moved slowly toward the reserved seating, where velvet ropes and special guest nameplates gleamed. He settled into a chair near the aisle, James's invitation in hand. But a young woman with a headset and clipboard stopped him. "Sir, this area's for invited family only," she said, her tone sharp. Frank nodded calmly. "My son, James Sullivan, asked me to sit here, check the list." She didn't even glance at it, just pointed to the back. "Seats are full. Move, or security's coming." Ellen watched, her pulse quickening. Frank didn't argue. He stepped back, still holding the invitation. "It's all right, young lady," he said, his deep voice tinged with a wry warmth. "I'm old. Standing's fine." 2 security guards in black jackets approached. One pointed, the other touched his radio, their eyes hard. "Let's go, pal," one said. Frank met their gaze, a faint smile on his lips. "Son." "I'm not going anywhere." The crowd barely noticed, too caught up with photos and corsages. But Ellen felt a wave of second-hand shame. 6 men in the 5th row casual jackets. One in a baseball cap watched Frank quietly, their eyes sharp. Ellen realized they knew who he was. A chill ran down her spine. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. Someone had made a big mistake. The loudspeaker crackled to life in Hillcrest University's auditorium, a warm voice welcoming students and families. Applause erupted. Camera flashes sparked. But Ellen Harper couldn't tear her eyes from Frank Sullivan. He stood quietly under the glowing red emergency exit sign, clutching his son James's invitation. The scent of freshly printed programs hung in the air, mixing with the creak of plastic chairs as the crowd fussed with corsages. 2 security guards in black jackets lingered near Frank. One touched his radio, the other pointed again. "Come on, pal, let's go." "Don't make this hard," the taller one said, his voice sharpening. Frank gave a faint smile, his weathered eyes steady. "Son, I've been through worse places than this," he replied, his deep tone laced with a wry edge. Ellen's heart pounded. He didn't look like a troublemaker. He looked like a man carrying scars, inside and out. A few nearby spectators glanced over, their eyes flickering with suspicion, murmuring something that made Ellen flush on their behalf. The young usher with the headset and clipboard returned, whispering to the guards, "He's still here. Probably doesn't even have a real ticket." The shorter guard snorted. "I'll handle it." Frank didn't budge, his gaze fixed on the stage where James would soon appear. He thought of a night in Kandahar, dragging his wounded buddy Creed Marston through gunfire. Blood soaking the sand, his back screamed, but he kept going. Only for Creed to laugh. "You're too damn stubborn." "Gunny." Today, Frank was stubborn for James. "I'm not causing trouble," he said, his voice solid as stone. "My son wants me here. I'm staying." The shorter guard stepped closer, grabbing Frank's elbow. "Get up, or we're dragging you out." Ellen leaned forward, her breath catching. The crowd stayed oblivious, chuckling at a student speaker's joke about tuition costs. But the 6 men in the 5th row casual jackets, one in a baseball cap, weren't laughing. They exchanged glances. Silent as wolves. The tall one, hair cropped short, muttered, "They have no idea who he is." A chill ran down Ellen's spine. These men didn't just know Frank, they owed him something. The second guard raised his radio, growling, "You don't belong here. Move, or you're in trouble." Frank pulled out the invitation, its edges worn, and held it up. "My son wrote this. James Sullivan, top of his class." The usher barely glanced at it, shrugging. "Your name's not on the list." Ellen wanted to scream. They didn't even check. A mother beside her whispered, "Why are they treating him like that?" Ellen shook her head, shame mixing with anger. Frank stepped back once more, but kept his eyes on the stage. "I don't need a seat," he said, his voice low. "I just need to see my boy." The tall guard scoffed, gripping his radio tighter, ready to call for backup. Ellen clutched her program, nails digging into the paper. No one else noticed, except those 6 men. They sat taller, their eyes sharp as blades. Ellen knew, though she couldn't say why this moment was about to break open, and the whole auditorium would face a truth bigger than any speech. The Hillcrest University auditorium fell silent, save for the faint creak of plastic chairs as 2 security guards closed in on Frank Sullivan. Stage lights glinted off his worn marine dress jacket, highlighting frayed seams. Frank stood still, clutching his son's invitation, his eyes unwavering. The shorter guard, hand on his radio, growled, "Move, now! Or we drag you out, Ellen Harper." In the 5th row, gripped her program, nails tearing the paper. The crowd started to notice, their suspicious glances now mixed with curiosity. Suddenly, 6 chairs scraped the floor in unison, from the 5th row. 6 men in casual jackets, one in a baseball cap, stood up, wordless, unhurried. They moved toward Frank, their presence like a gathering tide. The leader, tall with close-cropped hair, flashed a gleaming trident badge. "He's not going anywhere," he said, his voice low, steady as a drumbeat. "He pulled us through hell." Ellen held her breath, a sacred weight settling over the room. The usher with the headset stepped back, her clipboard trembling, face flushed with shame. Frank didn't flinch, his gaze fixed on the stage where James would soon appear. He thought of Kandahar, dragging Creed through scorching sand, bullets whistling past. "Keep going." "Gunny," Creed had whispered. But Frank never left anyone behind. Today, he stood for James. "You boys don't need to do this," he said, his voice soft, tinged with wry humor. "I'm old, used to getting yelled at." The lead SEAL shook his head, his eyes fierce with loyalty. "No one's yelling at you today?" The crowd hushed, whispers fading. A mother near Ellen wiped her eyes, murmuring, "They don't know who he is." On stage, James Sullivan, in a black cap and gown, stepped forward, light catching his tense face. He grabbed the mic, voice shaky but firm. "That's my dad," he said. "He never brags, but I'm proud of him." James left the stage, no permission needed. and strode to Frank. He snapped a military salute, then threw himself into his father's arms, hugging so tight Ellen felt her chest ache. Frank rested a hand on his son's shoulder, his eyes softening in a rare way. "Easy, son," he whispered. "We're all right." The 6 SEALs stood tall, saluting in unison, their eyes a mix of respect and emotion. Ellen blinked back tears. The usher bowed her head, her clipboard clattering to the floor. The guard slipped away, avoiding eye contact. Applause started, slow at first. A single clap, then spreading like rain across the auditorium. Not loud, just pure reverence. Ellen stood, clapping, not just to honor, but to apologize. A student nearby whispered, "He's a hero." Frank didn't gloat. He just looked at James, his eyes saying more than words ever could. He tucked the invitation into his pocket, next to his wife's faded photo, like sealing a promise kept. The 6 SEALs stood behind him, silent sentinels. The auditorium woke up, no longer a place of ceremony but a witness to something greater. Quiet courage needs no words, yet it makes the world stand tall. The applause in Hillcrest University's auditorium swelled like a tide, white light glinting off the polished wooden floor. Frank Sullivan, in his frayed marine jacket, sat in the second row beside James, his weathered face softening as he looked at his son. The air carried the faint scent of daisies from a nearby bouquet, blending with the soft footsteps of graduates leaving the stage. Ellen Harper, in her pastel dress, clapped slowly, her eyes shimmering. The crowd, once indifferent, now stood, their gazes offering atonement in place of words. Frank opened James's invitation, its edges worn, and reread Dad. "I want you in the front row." He thought of Annie, his wife, who'd be beaming today, fussing over James's gown 3 times before letting him go. In Kandahar, her photo in his pocket kept him alive. He tucked the invitation away, fingers brushing the faded picture, whispering, "See, Annie, I did it." James, in his black cap and gown, gripped his father's hand, eyes full of pride. "Dad, I knew you wouldn't give up," he said. Frank smiled. "Old, but not senile yet," he quipped, his voice warm with humor, making James laugh. The 6 SEALs, in casual jackets, one in a baseball cap, stood behind like silent guards. Their leader, hair cropped short, stepped forward, pressing a challenge coin into Frank's hand. It was engraved, "The quiet lead, the loudest wars." Frank turned it over, his shoulders easing, as if a weight had lifted. "Don't need this." "Creed," he said, but his eyes shone with gratitude. Ellen wiped her tears, the sacred air lingering. A female student, cheeks streaked, paused before Frank, saluting sharply. "Thank you for saving them," she whispered. Frank nodded, silent, his gaze kind. The auditorium emptied, chairs creaking amid scattered laughter. Ellen stayed, watching. Students passing. Frank shook his hand, touched his shoulder, drawn to him like a flame. The usher, her clipboard forgotten, slipped away, head bowed. A father near Ellen murmured, "I was wrong to think he didn't belong." Ellen nodded, her heart lighter. Frank stood, James at his side, and walked to the emergency exit where he'd once been shunned. The SEALs followed, wordless, their presence echoing. Outside, golden sunlight poured down. Frank and James stood by the car, shoulder to shoulder. "What did I teach you today?" son Frank asked. James paused, then said, "Silence isn't weakness, it's strength." Frank nodded, eyes bright. "And never let anyone take your dignity." From a distance, Ellen watched, knowing this moment would live forever. Frank hadn't come for the spotlight. He came for a promise. But the whole auditorium rose, not because he demanded it, but because it was right. This story of Frank reminds us that quiet courage always shines. His stand wasn't loud, but it moved a room to honor him. Share this. Like it. Subscribe. to celebrate the unsung heroes among us. Every story told is a flame lighting up history. Together, we keep dignity alive, never letting it fade into the shadows.